Hello everyone, this is Sumant. In this video, let's discuss encapsulation in Python. So, this encapsulation is nothing but you can see the encapsulation. So, if you just divide this word and understand, encapsulation means we are preserving some data inside something, right? That's called as encapsulation. So, what we are storing, where we are storing, let's understand that. So for example, if you take a class, right? So if you just take a class, for example, let's say I will just define a class here, class. So let's take this student class. I'm just taking student class and I'm just defining the constructor here, and I'm just storing two variables like name and age, and here I'm just giving, right, I'm just storing two values like. Now if you just see this example, this class example, here I have just defined some constructor and I've just stored some values, right, some like name and age. So if you just see this, like by creating the class and by storing the details and methods or whatever it may be inside the class, we are just protecting these variables and we are just preventing the accidental changing of this data. We are just preventing these from accidental change, right? For example, if you didn't define this class student, I mean if you did store this value inside this class, and let's say if you just store some values like I'm just defining some variable name is equal to, if I just store in this manner, what will happen is, so there may be a chances, right, there may be a chances where you may overwrite this name. For example, let's say again I have to use this name, then again what we will do, I will just define the name variable and we will just change the data, right? So in order to prevent that accidental changing or accidental modification, we are just using this encapsulation. It means we are just storing the attributes and methods inside some particular thing. Here that is called class. So we are just storing everything inside the class. So that's called as encapsulation. And the next thing which I have to discuss is abstraction, data abstraction. So this encapsulation and data abstraction is nearly the same, but it varies in few things. So let's discuss the data abstraction also. So abstraction is nothing but it is used to hide the important attributes. So encapsulation is nothing but storing everything inside a single unit, and this abstraction is nothing but in that attributes which we have stored in single unit, we are still hide important attributes. In this abstraction there are three main concepts, that is public variable, protected variable and private variables. So let's discuss one by one. So first one is public variable. So public variable is nothing but the normal variables which we have created here. Like if you see here, I've just created self dot, like I've just created name and age, right? So this is called as public variable. It means we can just access within the class and also outside the class. For example, let's say if I just want to access this, I can just create the object of this class, and I'm just giving like, I'm just giving the values, and if I just try to give a dot name, you can see I got a RAM, right? So we can just so public variable is nothing but we can just access it outside the class as well as inside the class. Inside the class is nothing but, like if you just create another method like def test of self, and even here you can just use print self dot name. So if I just give here enter, and similarly you can just, how we just access it, you can just give a dot, so you can see I got a RAM, right? So that's called as public variable. It means we can just access inside the class as well as outside the class. There is no restriction to access variables. And the next variable is protected variable. So in the name itself we have that, like protected variable. It means we use, there is a restriction in accessing that variable. So what this protected variable means, like how to create this protected variable means, so we can just include the underscore inside in bit, like underscore in front of this. You can see I just included underscore here. So that's how you can just create this protected variable. So what's the advantage of this protected variable means? So these protected variables can be accessed within the class or or we can just access through the derived class, right? It means we can just create like we can just create another class, and we can just create a derived class of this student class. Then even in that class we can just access. It means we can just access within the class as well as the class derived from the parent class, but we can't access it outside the class. So if I just want to access this, I can just give similar class, right? We have just stored this self dot underscore name, right? Similarly, we have just you want to access this self dot underscore name, and if I just try to enter this, so you can see even now we can just access the object, like we can just access the attribute inside the class. But if I just try to access this outside, for example, let's say I'm just trying to access by using the name a dot. Right? If I just try to access using this a dot name here, you can see we got like student object has no attribute name, right? So since even though we have this attribute name here, but since we have just make that as protected variable, so if I just try to access a dot name, so we can see we get attribute error. So this is an advantage, right? So if you don't want others to access your data, you can just create like this, like unless and until the one who are using the class knows that this variable is protected, right? Unless and until they know this variable is protected, they can't access this. So if they know the variable is protected, you can just access that using this a dot underscore name. You can see we can just access this a dot underscore name, but we can't just access using the a dot name, right? That you have to understand. The way how we created this like protected attributes, in similar manner you can just create protected methods also. So if you just want to create protected methods, you can just give like def, like you can even similarly you can just give underscore before the name of the method, so it will just become protected method. So that's how you can just create this protected variables and protected methods. And next thing which you have to discuss is private variables. So private means, and like this is similar to that of protected, but it is bit more difficult to access. It means we can't access this outside the class. It is bit more secure. So that's what we can say. It means we can just access that only within the class. In the previous case I have said right, in protected variables can be accessed within the class as well as the class derived from it. But now these private variables cannot be accessed from the class derived from it. Only you can access within the class. So that's this private variable. So how we can just create this private means, we used to use this double underscore. Here in the protected variables we used to use the single, right? Here we are just using double underscore. That's how we can just create this protected variable. So we just enter, and if I just give a test of, you can see even now this private variable can be accessed within the class. Now let's say if I just create another class student1, and I'm just passing this student class here, and now if I just try to give that, so since we are just accessing, we just want to create the constructor of the class, right? So I'm just creating like student dot double underscore init of, and I'm just passing the variables which have accessed here. Now if I just create another method like test1 of self, and here if I just try to print self dot double underscore name, if I just try to give enter, and if I just try to create an object for this, right, I'm just creating an object of student1 class, and if I just give a dot test1 of, you can see, right, we get an error, right? So that's what this private variable, it means we can just access it only within the class. So that's this. And similar way you can just create if you just want to create a private method in similar way, like you can just use this double underscore, and you can just create the private method. But there is one method like how you can just access this outside the class. So that's called as mangling technique, like mangling method. So like let's understand that mangling, how we can access that. So I'm just creating an object here, a dot student name, and here I'm just giving a dot. For example, let's say I just want to access the name, right? We used to have a dot double underscore name, right? If we just give a dot double underscore name, we used to get error, right? So if we just try to give, like, I'm just using the name of the class like student, and in front of this class I'm just giving underscore. Now you can see we can just able to access that. So if you just want to access the private variable, you can just access this using this, right? You can using this name mangling. This is called as name mangling. You can just use this technique to access. And similarly, if you just create an, for example, let's say if you just create a protected variable, so you can see I'm just created protected variable. So in similar case, right, if you want to access the protected variable, you can just access using this a dot underscore name. And but if you want to use that, if you just want to access that private variable, you can just use that name mangling technique which we have discussed. So that's the difference between this encapsulation and abstraction. And I hope you understood this video. Like, I hope you understood this encapsulation, what is abstraction, what is this public, private and protected variables, and how to access these protected and private variables. I hope you understood everything. So that's it for this video. If you understood the video, like the video, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. If you have anything to share, just feel free to share that in the comment section. And thanks for watching.